that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello, everybody. Dresden Files, Book 3, Grave Peril, by Jim Butcher. These are just so much fun. Such a nice palate cleanser in between the bigger stuff for, like, I don't know, Wheel of Time. But they're just really fun. You know, these books continue to be just a solid, good time. The prose aren't anything to necessarily write home about, but they're consistent. They're fun. I wouldn't say they're bad. They're kind of basic, but that's fine. The story is so much fun. This book is very ghost heavy. We deal with the A plot is a ghost rampaging around and hurting the ones that Dresden cares about. And the B plot would be this vampire court situation going on. So that's your two things there. The A plot actually ties into a plot from a previous book, which you have to read to find out what that is. And you know, I know the common complaint of this series is that Dresden is like misogynistic or whatever, but he's such a good person, you know. I mean, like, sure, he gets some thoughts about women in these books, passively. I don't feel like it dwells extremely long. Sure, it can be a little grating if you're reading these back to back to back, but if you use these as just like palate cleansers, I kind of forget that it happens. But then again, if you were being thought policed for every thought you ever had, man, woman, I don't care what you are, you'd probably be really embarrassed and ashamed. I don't judge people for having passing thoughts, which come and go like the wind. I judge people based on their actions, which stand firm like a rock or fizzle out because they're inconsistent and hypocrites. So, every action that Jim Butcher's the author, every action that Dresden makes proves to me that he is a good soul and makes me not really care about some of the other stuff you may think about from time to time, because you can't control that. What I will also say is, well, you know, the plots are never anything super complex per se. They are always fun and engaging. 2 was probably the weakest so far. This was definitely a step up. But the interpersonal stuff, the relationships between people, is the strongest highlight of this series for me. It is something that consistently, you know, even if every story is mostly like a bit of the week, you know, like a what's this adventure going to be this week, with, you know, occasional plot threads carrying through, the one consistent thing that is always progressing and getting stronger with each iteration is the relationships between all these characters. Take notes, Wheel of Time. But seriously, like, Jim Butcher has such a way with bonding of these characters. Dresden and Michael. Dresden and Susan. Dresden and Bob. Even with his enemies, there's such nuance and complexity and just beautiful character work done in these stories that it is so heartwarming to read about. And Jim Butcher has made such a flawed character. Harry is such a good soul, has such a good heart, mostly. And he struggles with so much mentally, internally, along with just a lot of other things going on that makes it a very complex character. In between a bunch of stuff with his past, like with his fairy godmother, I won't get anything more than that. You have to read to find out. But there's a lot of stuff with his past and stuff going on that just makes him a really compelling character, while also being kind of an everyman, even though he's also like the guy that gets everything done. So I think that's a lot of fun. But in between the A plot with the ghost, we're again, this is clearly a universe like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Supernatural, where like everything and anything that is like a mythological, supernatural thing in stories and history is actually real in this setting, right? So we continue to build the lore with like how ghosts work in this universe, what the rules are and stuff. All that stuff's like fun. The difference between demons and ghosts and all the shenanigans and more stuff with the vampires. You get a little bit of their politics, their vampire core, which very much reminded me of the 2004 video game Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which is an excellent game, by the way. If you like vampires, wait for December to come around or spring or whatever. I guess for you, the closest thing would be the spring sale, like on Steam, but you can get like Vampire the Masquerade Bloodline, the first one, for like dirt cheap. The new one came out just last year at the time that you're watching this, but regardless of that, the original game, which is the main one you should be playing, you can get for like less than $10 during a spring or winter sale. So highly recommend that if you love vampires. But just an absolute blast. And like I said, it doesn't have the pros that maybe I prefer from something like a Erickson or a McCarthy. But what it fails on that front, it excels in other things. Again, plot, nothing super deep or complex necessarily, and there's sort of a structure formula that if you read these kind of back to back, you start to notice this kind of A plot, B plot, convergence of plot, resolution that keeps happening in all these books so far, with not a change of formula really, but the character work is the strongest thing. And I know for a fact that I'm going to adore all of these people by the end of the series. Which, speaking of which, this year, we got a new book, which is why I'm reading all these to catch up, and be with everyone else in the fandom, on the current book in the novel by Jim Butcher. So, that's what I'm doing. I'm catching up now. So, uh, I think I did a good job on non-spoiler. I'll say also, like, at first I thought it was gonna be like a James Bond type of thing where Jim was gonna make Harry have a bunch of random one-off girlfriends throughout the series, and I thought that might annoy me. But Susan has stuck around, and I really like Susan, and I'm really curious to see what's gonna happen with her moving forward, considering how we end the book. But that's all I can really say there. Um, of course, this is a very old series. This came out when I was a very wee lad. I was a child when these were coming out, so you've had a long time for spoilers, but at the same time, there's people like me who have never read it, so I won't spoil it for you in this particular section. But it's a good. If you were disappointed with the second one, give this one a shot. 2 is definitely the weakest. I mean, I still had fun with it, but it's the weakest one. I felt the first book was stronger than Fool's Moon, but this was a step up, I think, above the first two. I mean, the chemistry was just off the charts with everyone, from the romantic interest to all the other characters. I love Michael. I think Michael was in the second book or the first book, or I'm forgetting, but it's such a good dude. He's just a good dude. It was what you kind of learn about him. Like, he has his principles, he has his morals, he will stand his ground on certain things. Harry and Michael don't necessarily agree on everything, but maybe something 2025 needs to learn is that you don't have to agree on everything to get along, to be friends. It doesn't just have to be on superficial things either, like novels or video games or movies. It could also be the bigger things too. Unless the person wants you physically dead, then I'm not gonna keep going on this, but I think you can imagine what I'm talking about. Everybody can be friends. The only reason you can't is if you choose to be. If you choose anger, if you choose hate, if you choose lines and sides over a person who loves you. So Michael has a lot of care and respect for Harry. He doesn't agree with him on everything, but he cares for him, and vice versa with Harry for him and his family, which we learn that he has a family in this book, He's a happily married man, and he believes in Christ, which is another thing that is a bit confusing. Supernatural does the same thing, where you have like everything under the sun is true, every religion, everything, all the things, it's all real, it's all true. Um, so I don't really know how that works. I mean, like, if demons exist, like factually, then there's probably a God that exists, but they've never seen him, at least so far in these books. Um, but Harry has a hard time with faith. But one thing that I really love about this book in particular, um, is that like Michael's not like a magic user, but what Michael does have is faith. And faith in this world, in this setting, in the world of the Dresden Files, it doesn't matter whether the faith is inherently true, right? The faith could be false. But what gives Michael his power, his strength, is the devotion and the veracity of his faith and his belief of this thing. So I think that's really cool that the power of faith, the power of devotion can give you strength in this world, regardless of where it's being directed toward. So for instance, love, kind of cheesy, but that would also be an example of an extreme devotion can be used to channel power. I just think that's a unique concept and gives, a bigger question to the idea of God in the Dresden Files world, because he doesn't necessarily have to exist for Michael to have power. But also, he could exist and be lending Michael support. We just don't get any clear answers on that. But I think if there's a world full of fairies and demons and all this and whatnot, that God certainly can exist and it wouldn't be out of left field. But then also, to that, I think even raises bigger questions than in our world, where the only problem really is us, that it goes, if God exists, why allow werewolves and all these other things and vampires and stuff to roam free and about and da. Why allow all this suffering? Sort of the same old thing that we have in real life. But I don't think the series will necessarily go as philosophically in depth with that as it possibly could. But I do think it's interesting. By and large, should you read Dresden Files 3, Grave Peril? I think you should. I think these books are fun palate cleansers that you can, read in a couple days. And it's just fun. Reading Jim Butcher's writing is, and many people have made this comparison, it's like reading a Joss Whedon script. It's the MCU before it got cringe. And because it's got that kind of quippy, fast paced, kind of like dialogue back and forth between characters, the humorous banter. But it's not annoying. At least not to me. Maybe you'll find it annoying. But I think it does that balance well. Whereas like Marvel movies nowadays are trying so hard to be funny that it kind of just ruins it. But I think these books know when to be funny, but they also know when to just drop all that stuff and just be serious. And I think it works wonders for this story. So I absolutely recommend it. I am so looking forward to Summer Nights by Jim Butcher, book 4 of the Harry Dresden books. And I'm going to get into spoilers, so if you don't want any of that, now's your time to leave. But I look forward to talking about that book with you next month, which will be very soon. And until then, I don't know. What's an outro? Have faith in something. How about that? I'm not going to tell you what to have faith in, but have faith in something, because faith is powerful. Pistos, Greek word meaning trust. I'm going to spoilers now. Ghostbusters? That's the first vibe I got when we had Michael and Harry dealing with this ghost. We kind of do like the present tense, and then we get like a flashback to the couple days prior, and then we move past this opening section. It's kind of a little clunky, but it's okay. The reason I also mentioned Ghostbusters is not just because there's ghosts, but because apparently recently there's been a bunch of ghosts like activity like all around the city, which very much reminded me of like because everything going on with Gozer and the first Ghostbusters, there were a lot of ghosts like causing problems around the city. Michael and Harry have a wonderful discussion on love. This is when we're traveling back to the events of just what we had just read in the opening chapter, where they're in the car Beetle. And Michael's asking Harry if he loves Susan, and he refuses to give a straight answer on it, at least for a while. But I really like their conversation. This is also when we learn about Harry's godmother, fairy godmother, who he was promised to from his own mother, mind you, way back when. So we meet a girl named Lydia who says he's in trouble. We also learn that the godmother of Harry is named Leah. I also wrote down the note that I just said about faith in the non-spoiler section, so I'll skip over that. I'll also skip over, is God real in Dresden? Because that's another note I had. We had the vampire court, which I also talked about in non-spoiler. I'll get into, I only have 2 of these little excerpts, but this is the first one. So what could do that, Bob? What are we dealing with here? Bob's eyes shifted restlessly around the room. It could be a couple things from the spirit world. Are you sure you want to know? I glared at him. All right. It could be something big enough. Something so big that even a fraction of it was enough to attack Malone and lay that spell on him. Maybe a god someone's dug up. A cat, Kali, or one of the old ones. H.P. Lovecraft. No, I said flatly. Bob, if this was so tough, it wouldn't be tearing up people's cars, ripping kitty cats apart. That's not my idea of a godlike evil. That's just pissed off. Harry, you went through the threshold. Ghosts don't do that. They can't. So, like I said, the cool thing about this is not only do we get, fresh lore on ghosts, which we haven't really talked about in the Dresden world so far, so we get, that's a whole new section of lore for this world. It's just ghosts in general. But we also get a little bit more with the magic in terms of thresholds and barriers and how that all works, and how, there are thresholds to the mortal world that supernatural creatures have problems dealing with, like a family. While they don't believe in anything necessarily, their love for each other, their connection to one another creates a big threshold in their home, which makes it a bigger barrier to entry for supernatural creatures. I mean, they have to be something extremely powerful to cross a threshold, because every time you cross a threshold, it diminishes your power in the mundane world. It's a little bit more complex than that, but it's a really interesting idea, and I really like that. It's something, I haven't really seen before. Not that I've seen every fantasy series under the sun, but, I watched Buffy and Supernatural growing up, so I'm used to that sort of concept of supernatural and the mundane, and I just felt like that was a fresh sort of perspective on that. We learn that the demon from book 1, I think it was book 1, is actually, hold on, but the demon from book 1, I think it was book 1, is using Dresden's face to hunt Murphy. So the demon, well, not actually the demon, it's the cult wizard guy from book 1 that was messing with Dresden. He killed himself so he could become a ghost and get revenge on Harry and everyone he loves. So he uses Harry Dresden's face and tries to attack Murphy, which really pisses Harry off. Leah keeps causing problems in this book because, Harry's mother made a promise to Leah that Harry would be hers, and so she's kept causing problems in this book. What really started it, I mean, at first I was going to be like, why is she only choosing now? But at some point they do have to enter the Never Never, and so she senses him, which kind of sets her off on doing things now as opposed to, but again, I don't know why she hasn't really bothered him before, but whatever. Harry accepts his godmother Leia's bargain, but he says, I have to help the people I love first. You have to let me, please. The second phone note, the cigarette wasn't lit. He's a dragon, Michael said. A what? The man's eyes flickered with interest for the first time, and he narrowed his focus, not upon me, but upon Michael. Just so, he said. You may call me Mr. Peril. Why don't I just call you Fairfax? Michael said. Mr. Peril narrowed his eyes and regarded Michael with a dispassionate gaze. You know something of the lore, at least, mortal. Wait a minute. Dragons. Dragons are supposed to be big. Scales, claws, wings. This guy isn't big. Peril rolled his eyes and said impatiently, "We are what we wish to be, Master Drafton." "Dresden," I snapped. So, again, then we're introducing dragons, which I don't think we've really addressed before either. It's really cool that a dragon can disguise himself as just a everyday man, and how Michael realizes what he is the fact that he has a cigarette, but it's not lit, or like he's smoking, but nothing's coming out because he actually breathes fire. It's an interesting little thing they do there that I really enjoyed. Not that dragons are a big part of this book, but again, we're introducing dragons now. That they can look like humans, that they have the ability to speak. Not every fantasy series can they speak, you know? So I thought all that was just great. I loved it. Um, and again, Leah's messing with Harry and Susan, who's this, she's been a reporter in all these books. She gives up a year of her memory to save Harry. And then also the whole thing with the vampire court. I really don't have anything to add there other than Bianca wants revenge because of book 2. But this was kind of like a 3D chess game thing here where the bad guy from book 1 wanted revenge, the bad guy from book 1 and 2 wanted revenge. So they conspire together, basically. This is a whole plot to get Harry Dresden dead, but it doesn't work out. And she said, "If I can't kill you, then let me take something that you love away as you took something I love." So the whole thing was making Susan become a vampire. But Harry refuses to do that. And because he refuses to do that at this vampire court, it means, which has to affect next book heavily, is that there's going to be all-out war between vampires and wizards because Harry isn't inherently a representative for the White Council, the Council of Wizards, but since he's based in Chicago, if he gets invited to supernatural events like a vampire court, he is not just Harry Dresden, he represents wizards as a whole. And so by being a bit selfish, I can say, and choosing Susan over that, all-out war is beginning. And he does get Susan out, but she's still like in that phase of like a in between human and vampire because she hasn't like drank any blood yet, but she has been bitten. And I guess in this world, she has to officially drink of somebody else's blood to officially turn completely. So, and Harry finally admits that he loves her, but she was struggling to do all book, and she says she loves him too, but she can't be with him because of this now. So it's a whole situation. And then it just kind of ends. We got to be worried about all-out war with vampires now, and wizards. So I don't know what's going to happen in the next book, but I'm excited. And I'm excited to see what happens with Susan, because if she can get that under control, I mean, imagine having like a really powerful vampire lady on your side as like an ally. I don't know. I can imagine things for the future that would make that really cool. I would hope they get to be together, but I don't know if they will be now because of this. So there is the plight of Harry Dresden. But anyway, as I said, I really enjoyed this book. It was a lot of fun. Is it the highest peak of literature ever? No, but I don't think Jim Butcher's trying to be. He's trying to just make fun stories, and these are consistently fun. Which, listen, I love to be challenged. Like, I'm reading Suttree. It's a struggle, but I'm enjoying it. It gets my brain turning. And I love complex worlds. I love Malazan. I love aspects of Wheel of Time. And I'm going to love a lot of other fantasy series that are a little bit more in-depth. But sometimes it's fun to just sit down and listen to Harry Dresden's spiel and make fun of loser demons and other people as he goes about saving the day. Sometimes it's just a fun palate cleanser, He's like the wizard Spider-Man. Like, everybody wants to be Spider-Man, everybody wants to be a wizard, but nobody wants to be Peter Parker, because Peter Parker's life sucks. And that's kind of the same thing with Harry Dresden. So, yeah, I love it. It does, especially because it's in Chicago. Chicago is not the same as New York, but they both have similar sort of vibes, I'd say. At least from the media I've watched and read of these two cities. I've never been to either. I'm not very well traveled. But I actually do. If I'm ever going to recommend this to somebody, I'm going to say Wizard Spider-Man. I think that's pretty apt for Harry. I think he's a very quippy character, and he gives me a lot of the similar vibes of Spider-Man as well. So, and I love Spider-Man, so I think that makes sense. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking so I can get started on Summer Nights. Until then, if you love someone and you haven't told them, go tell them. Unless it's going to cause a really bunch of big drama problems, then don't do it. You just keep it with the sentiment of the book, okay? And if she's a vampire, it's going to be a little bit... If he or she is a vampire, it's going to be a little bit more complicated for you. So, maybe interview them first. That was awful. I should quit YouTube right now. I'll see you.